Welcome to the Pack the House Show, where we have conversations about sharing your faith as you walk through life with others.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Pack the House. Here with another familiar face. Pastor Scott is here with us. Maybe you've heard of him before. I should introduce myself. I'm Jason. Here with Pastor Scott because we're doing a little bit of family business in our sermon series this week, or last week and this coming week, as we have our capital campaign. So I wanted to talk to Pastor Scott. You saw him on video. All of us watched him preach the same message. So I want to talk to him about that message and how we can use those ideas and specifically our capital campaign themes and kind of what all that means. So first question for us, not for us, for you. This is not a group discussion yet. First question is, one of our goals through this podcast is to help our listeners understand how to connect the sermon with friends, neighbors, coworkers, conversations they have throughout the week. When we do kind of in-house things like capital campaign, that gets a little tough, a little tricky. So I wonder what advice you could share, how you would think through that. How do we use this idea to say something encouraging or inviting to our friends and our neighbors?
And I'll start off by answering that with this. The text, John 17, actually even complicates it more. So you brought in right away the fact that we're sort of doing something that's inside and something that belongs to the family. But the text is even worse because Jesus says in the middle of the prayer, this high priestly prayer that he's preaching in John 17, he says right in the middle of it, I'm not praying for the world. And so It almost gives you the impression I'm going to just do what Jesus does, and that is not pray for the world or not reach out. But of course, that's not what he's doing. And I would say the same thing about our campaign. It's not just about us. So I'll start with Jesus, if that's okay.
Fair enough.
Jesus is specifically praying as his disciples are around him for them and for their ministry and for what's going to happen when he departs. And it would be easy for them, I think, to fall apart, obviously, without Jesus, to simply think the whole thing is done. And maybe they were part of something that was really cool, that lasted this 3.5 years, and now it's over. And so Jesus is telling them the mission goes on, even though he's going to ascend to the Father. He'll be crucified, he'll be resurrected, and then he'll ascend to the Father. He won't be physically present with them in the same way that he is, that the mission isn't done. And that's why he says, I'm not praying for the world, I'm praying for you, because he knows first and foremost, if they're going to share the gospel, they have to have the gospel, right? The old expression, you can't give what you don't first possess. And so he wants to make sure that that is solid in them. And that's what he's praying for. Father, put your name on them. Let your love dwell with them. He prays about the Holy Spirit elsewhere in the prayer, the Holy Spirit being sent. So all of those things. So in the prayer, we shouldn't neglect the fact that Jesus does say something difficult when he says, I'm not praying for the world, but he's not contradicting what he has said in John 3, that he has come for the world, but instead commissioning them as ministers. So first part, I would say first connection is Jesus. The Jesus connection is realizing that should be our prayer always. Our personal prayer should be, make me strong in the faith so that I'm confident as I go and speak to others. And when I don't feel strong, when I have my own, I'm going to say crisis of faith, but that sounds a little bit too strong. Even when I just have my own challenges of faith, to not let those things get in the way of what God's calling me to do. In fact, kind of do the opposite. Give me this extraordinary gift of faith in the Holy Spirit, so that I can, be about the things of the world. So that's the first thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you. So let's stick with the text for a minute if we can. What's the encouragement for me as a Jesus follower as I go out? So Jesus is praying for you and me, those who are his followers. What's the encouragement here?
That's the first. You're setting me up. You're teeing the ball high. That's
good, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
What's that?
I'm not a baseball guy, but that sounds good.
Yeah. For the record, that was a golf analogy, but it's okay.
I'm less a golf guy than a baseball guy.
It could be teeing the baseball up too, but you would want anyway. Your question is, how's this bring encouragement to me? I'm overwhelmingly encouraged by this. Jesus is praying for me. And when I think of that, again, I go to Romans, to Romans 8, where the Spirit intercedes for my prayers when I don't know what to pray. The Spirit takes my feeble words and my ridiculous asks and makes sense of them to the Father, right? Intercedes with groans that are inexpressible. And if you say it this way, and I'm not separating the persons of the Trinity or anything like that, but it's recognizing that the Spirit speaks the Father's language. And the same is true of Jesus. Jesus speaks the Father's language. I'm not talking about a specific tongue, but that they speak the same language. So he is praying for me. He's praying for you. He's praying for all disciples, so that we would be encouraged. We would be filled with the Spirit, filled with faith as we go out. And that's, I think, to me, that's so encouraging. Is thinking, you've probably been in a situation like this. Maybe it was your parents or somebody else, but you had something big to do for a day, like say you had a big test or something in school, and your mom wrote a little note, and put it in your lunchbox.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a note in there that said, like, I know you can do it, or my mom was always good about saying, remember what you study, right? Remember what you studied. And I think of that, Jesus interceding for us in the same way, of saying, hey, I know this, I put you in this place. I know this conversation that's before you. And I know you can do it. I'm praying. So that to me is encouragement. I hope that's not too campy. But I do think that that's what believers need to know, is that Jesus isn't just throwing you out there saying, hey, good luck among the wolves. Yeah. Right. He's throwing you out there and he's saying, yeah, you are going to be among wolves. And that's why my presence is with you. That's why my Spirit is in you.
Yeah. So just to reframe that a little bit, this is good news for believers, right? Jesus is with you as you're out. That's also something, if you're listening, that's something that would be really good news to those that you're interacting with as well. There is one who prays for you, right? When you're in that moment, when you don't even know what to say, you don't know where to turn. There is one who hears that and is ready to listen. So and we can use that in two ways.
And I think for the person that doesn't, even the person that doesn't yet know God, but is in that situation. I wish I could remember the songs. I can remember the lyric. I can't remember who it is. I don't know if it's The Script. Still Alive, but I'm Barely Breathing is the song. And he says, I just prayed to a God that I don't believe in, is the line in the song. It was a popular song probably 10 years ago. And that line always really resonates with me, of someone being in such a situation where they're like, I don't know what to do. And so I know some people do this prayer thing, so I'm going to just try this.
Almost kind of crying out to anything that's out there.
Exactly. Right. And then you think of Paul almost in Athens, before the people saying, what you don't know, I declare to you is known. This God is known. By the way. What's that?
Acts chapter 16, just for reference.
Yeah. And so
you're absolutely right.
So when you say that, like, understand that God is seeking and saving all. He wants to hear from people. Lost. Yeah. Yeah, and all those, he wants to hear from them. So I love that you said that. That's even an encouragement for others too, to say, God's not surprised. If we could say it this way, God doesn't need an introduction to you. He already knows you. He has heard you. Yeah.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit to our campaign focus. One challenge that many have with the church, especially people who've maybe been in the church and drifted away. One challenge is, well, they only want my money. They're always about my money. And so when I go to my coworker on, it's after Monday, but the following day, right? And what you talk about in church on Sunday, we had a campaign kickoff, and that has the potential to trigger that, right? So the blunt question is, why is that not this? Why is this not kind of, we want your money?
And I could be equally blunt back and say this. You pay for what you value. And so if this is something that is a part of you, if this is a part of your faith life, if being part of this community is a part of who you are, why wouldn't you pay into it in the same way you do everything else? It's not to say that you pay and buy your way in. It's much more that sense of, I knew an old, now sainted man who said, if God's worth anything, he's worth everything. And so it's that sense of, I'm not ashamed to say, that the church needs your money to continue its mission. Not ashamed of that. And by the same token, that is not where I would lead with people, nor do I want people to think that's what our message as ministry is about. Like, hey, we're really just interested until you can give money to the church. Then you're really accomplished. That's just a part of our life of faith. And so in the same way, we don't emphasize it a bunch of other Sundays, we do this Sunday. And I also think when people say that they're just after my money, typically, well, I'm going to say this, typically that's one of two things. One of them is their heart isn't in it. And so the idea of paying for something that they don't value is ridiculous. Nobody wants to pay a speeding ticket, right? It's not like, this is something where you go, yeah, fantastic. This is awesome. But you don't mind, again, say you're not a believer, there will be something, a cause to which you're willing to put your assets and say, yeah, I'm behind this. This is what, and it's the same with the church. That's one thing. So you don't understand it because you're not a part of it. It doesn't motivate you and move you in the same way. The other thing with that is that when what we believe is that God gives us everything we have. And so what we're saying is, I'm going to set aside this particular part of what I have for this specific task of the church, or this specific movement of the church at this time. And so, we call it generosity. It's recognizing, hey, God's been generous with me, and so I'm going to be generous in what I do. And so again, that's with somebody else. That's a message that maybe isn't easily understood, and it's certainly not what I would lead with. I wouldn't say, like you said around the water cooler, I wouldn't say, hey, yeah, our church kicked off its capital campaign. But I might say, hey, our church is doing some amazing things together. And when we all rally around, kind of watch and see, check this out.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. Also want to point out, we've talked about this a lot in previous, not you and I, but previous conversations here. When a person says something along those lines, the church is always after my money, it's usually an indication that they've been hurt somewhere along the line. It's usually not an attack so much as it is a defense. And I say that to say, if you are listening and you encounter that conversation, know that you don't have to defend against it. Know that you don't have to stand up for this. The person that you're speaking to is not coming after you. They are expressing where there's been some pain.
Absolutely.
And
even probably where they've seen, depending on their age, like if they're my age or older, they dealt with all of the televangelist stuff.
Yep.
Where those guys all took all that money from people who meant well. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the church has a history of that.
Even so back, some validity to it.
Yeah, right.
It's not what we're after, but there's some definitely validity to it.
Absolutely.
So one of the things you use the word pay for what we value. I really hear you saying we're investing in what we think is important, what we think is God's mission. You said just at the end of this that I really liked. Our church is doing some amazing things together. I want to talk through that a little bit. The items or the pieces that are a part of this campaign, how do they support us in doing our cornerstone mission of encouraging the next?
Right. Well, I would say the first one is the hardest, which is understanding renovations of the buildings as part of that. And really, that's just a function of wanting to be good stewards of the facilities, the properties that we have. That's the hardest one to understand or to connect to mission, because really it's making better what we already possess. A lot of it is reducing dissatisfaction. A lot of it is things people don't even think about, like who thinks about how watertight the building is, but doing those things does make sure that we don't have to spend inordinate amounts of money later on. So that's one thing. And also just making it an appealing place. So when we do things, when our building is available to others, and we are participating, it does look good. It does look nice. It's not like we're inviting someone to something that's questionable or, So that's the hardest one. The second one is reducing debt. And again, that actually connects to ministry and to outreach a lot cleaner, because what we're trying to do is, as we pay that down, we're freeing up more money to be used for ministry. So the money we're not paying in interest is money that we can use toward other things that the ministry is involved in. We can resource other things better because of that. And then the last one is obviously, to me, the clearest connection to specific ministry, which is the Child Development Center. And we know people, I mean, I'm saying it this way because my children are of a different age right now. So it's not something that I need. So when I say we know that people need daycare, I'm not saying like they all, yeah, there you go. I'm not saying they all need it. I just mean my kids aren't in that era, or that age. And so we're looking at this and saying, this is something that people are doing, people need. And so, yeah, it's a service. It's a paid service, but at the same time, we think we can do it well. And we can, as a part of that, be those who reflect Jesus, be those who care well, those who are doing extra things for the families, those who are being consistent in what we, kind of what we believe. And Jesus said, let the little children come to me. And we believe that's a way we can do it. This is something that we've done. And so setting this up, the Child Development Center, setting this up, getting this going, all of that, it's a way for us to reach a different group of people. And we already do that with our preschools. We have preschools in Carmel and in Eagle Creek.
Play area somewhat.
The play areas, yeah, definitely. There's different things we do. VBS, there's different things we do where we demonstrate this. This is another or an extension of that.
Yeah. So our church is doing exciting things together. We're investing in what we find is valuable as God's mission. Specifically, we are creating inviting, attractive spaces that can be an asset to our community. We're working on meeting a need, a demonstrated need for quality, high quality, caring childcare, and we're freeing up funds to, again, meet needs in our communities, reach out to others. All this to say, all of that was entirely focused outward, right?
Yeah.
And obviously it's important for us too. We get value out of it, but it's all entirely focused outward. And so it's important to me because this is what people who are looking at from the outside want, is a church that cares about them, that is not in focused, but a church that cares about the community, cares about what they care about. Which is to say, again, this thing that felt at first like family business or inward thing actually has so much care and concern for the community around us. I think that's a really cool thing.
And I would add to that. I would just add an and, which is it is important to care for those inside also, and that also is a testimony, because I want to know. I'm trying to think of a specific example. Where you find you think, oh, this is going to be so great. Now that I'm a part of this, this is going to be so great. This is going to be so great. And then you get inside and you're like, oh, wait, this is kind of lousy on the inside. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to invite people to something that on the inside is hollow or empty. Yeah. So when we do care for ourselves, if you say it that way, when we do care internally, even that still should have that outward focus of, I want to know when I'm inviting somebody into something that I'm inviting them into a caring community.
Absolutely. And that, for example, the roof won't fall on them or.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I do also like that you said, we also don't want buildings that are eyesores. Like, right. Ooh, you see that cornerstone? Ooh.
Yeah, I would never bring my kid there. Yeah. So, and really saying that because, again, we want to equip those who are listening to be able to talk about this in ways that are attractive to their neighbors, and to be able to say, yeah, it is a lot of money. And that's, as you've said it in the sermon, that's a sacrifice. Yep. But we're investing in what we think is really valuable for God's work and for the community. And it's really not entirely about us. It's about you too. We want to be good neighbors and meet needs and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts for us as we wrap up? You can say no to that.
I would. You give me. You've always got one more thought. I always have one more thing. That's right. Yeah. Is really the sense of when the church works together, when we do stuff like this, and you and I have had a lot of conversations. I really cling to. I think it was Tom Rainer, probably 15 years ago. He said, "We live in an era where the greatest thing most Christians have seen the church do is add on a wing." Mm. I don't want to be that church. So like you said, I don't want just our renovations to be the story of what we do together. I want it to be the more, like you're talking about right now. I want it to be because we believe that next calling, that next person matters. I want to keep that in focus. So yeah, we add a bunch of stuff on that we need to do some renovations. And we're excited about that and we celebrate it. But that's not the greatest thing we see God do. Instead, we see through that God's going to touch lives and he's going to use us to do it.
Well said. Great point to end on. Well, thanks for being here with us. I'm sure we'll see you again soon. And if you're listening, we'll see you again next week. Have a great week.
Good. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for the Pack the House show. For more content like this, or to connect with us, visit our website, cornerstonelutheran.church.